We'll start the meeting 6:03, and I will read the remote meeting procedures as fast as I can. This meeting will be conducted remotely over Zoom. Attendance by board commission members will be remote, and remote attendance shall count towards quorum. The meeting will be broadcast live, recorded on ECAT. To use Zoom, you will need to use the link on the agenda, or download the Zoom application at www.zoom.us and create an account or use one of the call-in numbers listed on the agenda. You will need the webinar ID to join by phone only. While conducting meetings remotely, we will endeavor to keep meeting operations as close to our standard procedures as possible. However, use of this platform will necessitate some additional meeting protocols. While the board members, the commissioners, and applicants will be on video and audio, public participants will join the webinar as attendee, meaning they're muted with no video feed from them. During the public testimony portion of the meeting, members of the public can be recognized by using the raised hand function found on the participants from Zoom, or make a request for the Q&A function. If joining only by phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand. If an applicant wishes to display materials, please make the request of the chair and the email materials to board staff for sharing a screen. For starting testimony, please state your name and address for the record. There's a markup function in Zoom which will allow us to call specific areas of presentation materials. As in any public meeting, indecent behavior will not be tolerated, and anyone who abuses use of the meeting platform will be terminated from the meeting. Business will be handled at the times indicated on the agenda. Business not concluded in the allotted time will be tabled to the end of the meeting to allow for timely logins and remote attendance. Board members are asked to announce themselves when making a motion and second, so that it will be clear to the audience and minute takers who make motions. All votes will be by roll call. When all business indicated on the agenda has been completed, the members will vote to adjourn the meeting, signaling the end of the meeting and terminating the ECAT recording. All participants will be disconnected from the webinar at that time. Applicants will join the webinar as an attendee and promoted to panelist at their agenda item. Applicants will then be able to share their screens and present their materials. As much as possible, presentation materials should be provided beforehand so that materials can be included in the public record. Individual board chairs and staff may wish to keep screen sharing to their computer. Applicants are encouraged to speak with staff prior to the meeting on how material will be presented. There we go. All right. So I had sent out the meeting minutes from 2 weeks ago, the May 14th meeting minutes. Did anybody have any questions, comments, concerns about those meeting minutes? All right. Seeing none, do we have a motion to accept the May 14th meeting minutes?
So moved, Stebbins.
All right, Jamie. Do I have a second?
Second, Carlson.
All right, we have Ken. All right, so we'll do the roll call vote. I am yes. Ken?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
Let me see. Nancy?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Okay. So that passes unanimously. All right. So why don't we move on? I don't see Lauren, but hopefully she can always text me, or we can, we'll get a hold of Kathy. We can bring down the presentation if she comes on, and we can let her in. So why don't we just quickly, Dave, I didn't know if there's anything new on the water treatment facility project since last time, since the opening and whatnot.
Yeah, there's really no update. Still moving along punch list items and trying to get well 3 completed.
All right. Anyone have any questions or comments for Dave for that? All righty. Seeing none, maybe we'll just again quickly just hit on the early elementary school project update. I know we talked about it a lot last time. It's only been 2 weeks, so I don't know if someone wanted to jump in.
Yeah, no, it's we sent out a rolling completion list. I think we knocked off 15 of the items over the last 2 or 3 months. I think there's 5 or 6, couple door issues that are getting taken care of, some outstanding items that are on order that just need to be installed. But we are wrapping that up. We got a list going out weekly now so that they can, the contractor can, have a little bit of skin in the game here to get closed out efficiently. And then really the lead items are the only other item before all payments need to be made so that MSBA closeout documentation can get wrapped up.
All right. Anyone have any questions, comments for Walter on the early elementary school project? All right. Seeing none, Walter, why don't we go into the presentation now? Great.
You got it.
The public safety, public works.
Great. So a couple items to go over today. We have proprietary specification vote for the Municipal Building Committee. We have the vote to approve and any discussion necessary as it relates to combining 524 Depot and 321 Main as a singular bid project. We talked about that last time and the need for that to move forward to make sure that we can meet the budget. Then vote to approve the detailed design package. And then the fourth item, newer item, but has been anticipated and checked out with some town leadership, is to discuss and vote to approve commissioning agent services procurement. PMA will draft up that. We have a slide on that. We'll go over that with the group, and then followed up with scheduled next steps and key dates and meetings. So just a refresher, I think in April, this group was briefed on proprietary specifications in order to comply with Mass General Law 3039M. Needs to be proprietary specifications for sound reasons in the public interest stated in writing in the public records of the awarding authority. Because this is a standing building committee, this committee can make that recommendation. So as we've moved through the design process, KBA has and appropriate design consultants have identified the following 7 items that would be beneficial and in the public interest for Easton to move forward with as proprietary specifications. That's the Keltron radio system for fire alarm active network radio signaling, Edwards EST3 fire alarm system, Knox Vault Model 4432 for emergency key box, Knox Document Cabinet 1300 series for emergency document cabinets, Exact Technologies Exact Vision Enterprise VMS video management system, Cantech Entropaths Corporate for access control system, and then Medico X4 key system, Medico 408 SKP 26D cylinders for lock cylinder and keying for the buildings. So KBA's, on behalf of KBA, they provided this letter. This is kind of snipped. It was 3 pages and brought in, but this will be part of the project record for the proprietary specification vote. And with that, Greg, if you have anything to add on proprietary specifications, if not, I can turn it back over to Andy for the vote.
Yeah, Walter, I would just say that these are fairly standard or common items to be procured proprietarily, and they align with primarily either or I think in all cases existing systems that the town has in place. And so really the determining factor is if you are managing these systems yourself, which you are in most cases, or in all cases, apart from the emergency key box and document cabinet, that it's much easier to manage on a town-wide level if all things are the same or relatively the same by the same manufacturer. And so therefore it provides a significant benefit for the town that outweighs the potential for higher costs or lower competition. So I think this is a fairly standard list. I don't see anything out of the ordinary, and I think it meets the letter and spirit of the law.
Perfect. Thank you. Andy, with that, we can turn it back over to you for a vote to approve these items to be included in the project documents and the project as proprietary specification items.
Yeah, and I think you explained it well, especially knowing these are all town-wide things. I think what we'll do, because we have a bunch of votes today, is I think on this one, I think on some of the other ones, I might ask everyone to chime in on the committee, but since this one's pretty straightforward, I'll just ask, does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns about this list? About the proprietary items from the MVC? All right. All right, so seeing none, I will see if there is a motion to recommend the proprietary items. I'll just read them out. The fire alarm active network radio signaling, the fire alarm system, the emergency key box, the document cabinet, video management system, access control system, lock cylinders, and keying. So I have a motion to recommend that.
So moved, Stebbins.
All right.
Second, Bruce.
I have a second from Jason. All right, we will do a roll call vote. I am yes. Ken?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
All right. Nancy?
Yes.
And Jason?
Yes.
All right. So that is a unanimous vote to recommend those proprietary items. So I think we're good with that, Walter.
Great. So we'll move on. We discussed this at our last meeting. The two options, bidding the projects on the two sites as one public procurement versus bidding them as two separate. It allows the design to be a little bit further developed on the fire substation, although it could have been done early, but the benefits seem to be to bid them as a singular project, allow for a little bit more design in order to accomplish that. So just a reminder on where we're at on that aligns with the total project budget and the construction cost estimates aligning with the total project budget as well at the 150.53. So Andy, I can turn it back over to you if anyone has any questions regarding this. I think we went over it in pretty good detail last time, but happy to answer any questions on this item as well.
Yeah, knowing this is a bigger, a bigger vote, let's say, because this is a big part of the project. I'm just gonna kind of hit everyone up on the MVC for their comments. Ken, I'll start with you. Any comments?
No, I think it makes perfect sense saying you're gonna save up to 3 million on it. And it all would come under one general contractor, I assume, so that's always good. And all your sub bids will be together on one project. You don't have to separate them. I think it makes perfect sense. I mean, that's the way I would do it. And the only comment I have is I assume there might be some kind of project scheduling on how the two projects are gonna be constructed, whether there's gonna be some sequencing or not. But other than that, I think it's great.
We'll very likely request two separate schedules. Chad, feel free to jump in, but potentially 3 for each building, but very likely a schedule for each site from the general contractor that'll outline all of that.
We'll also call out the staffing requirements specifically to make sure they staff both of the sites. So it'll be operated as two projects under one umbrella. I mean, another major benefit is that, like you said, the filed sub bids will be the same across both buildings. So that means the material submittals that come in will be the same across each of the buildings. You don't have compatibility issues as you move even beyond the proprietary systems that we just talked about. So lots of benefits.
All right. How about Jamie? I just want to.
Yeah, I'll just ask, what was the low estimate again in terms of the savings? Was it like between 300,000 and 3 million? I remember it was really low.
Yeah, it was about 700,000.
All right, so realistically, guys, you think we might fall around 1.5, something like that?
So the tricky part of this, why the estimators are so far apart, one of them, it's kind of two different methodologies. One of them said, hey, we're just gonna take the savings to operate larger projects and apply those markups to the smaller projects as you get better rates on like your general conditions, general requirements, things like insurance, all adds up. The other estimator took a little bit of a different approach, said, yes, you're going to see savings there, but we also know that there's more competitive bidding environment once you get into the larger 50 million plus market. And we're just not seeing the competitive numbers come in on those smaller projects. So they put an additional premium in there just based on the anticipated more competitive bidding, which is tough to quantify. So it's difficult to say for sure which number is correct. But both methodologies are definitely founded, you know.
Yep,
Chad,
thank
if I
you.
could add, just that when you look at the last slide and compare the combined project estimates, Jamie, they're very, very close. They're within 1% of each other, basically. And so one just calculated a little bit differently, but when you take that into account, they're very close. When you don't take that into account and when you separate the two, they stay relatively close, but are a little bit further apart. And so they're really just coming at it a little bit differently, but both of them are coming to essentially the same conclusion, just at a slightly different order of magnitude, that the combined project is more efficient and more cost beneficial for the town. It's a balance between the efficiency in running a single project versus the added escalation that you accrue onto the fire substation project. If we were a year and a half ago, this outcome may have been different because escalation was much higher then. It has calmed a bit in the marketplace, and particularly in this project size. So it's a pretty specific thing that both estimators, I think, did a really good job in trying to quantify. In the benefit here is that we have two very good estimators coming at it a different approach and coming to essentially the same conclusion.
Yeah, thanks, Greg.
Dave, you want to chime in?
Sure, I completely agree with the recommendation to do it as one project. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Great. Nancy?
Yes, I think I agree. Yes, with doing it all together.
All righty. Jason?
Yeah, I agree with what everybody's commented to this point. I have nothing further to add.
All righty. And Leisha?
Yes, I totally disagree with everyone. Just kidding. Makes a lot of sense. Obviously, everybody wants to save money. And with escalation and everything, it would get a lot worse. So certainly defer to the experts here, but in my humble opinion, I completely agree.
Yeah, it seems like there's agreement of even myself, obviously 700,000, 3 million, either one. It's a good number. And it sounds like just the conversations we've had in these last few meetings that is bidding a project of this size, it's more favorable. It sounds like it's just going to be more favorable to bid them as two. So, all right. Well, I appreciate everyone's input. So I will take a motion to approve the project to be bid as a singular general contract. Do I have that motion?
So moved, Stebbins.
Jamie, do I have a second?
Second, Carlson.
All right. All right, so we'll do a roll call vote. I am a yes. Ken?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes,
And Jason?
Yes.
Okay, so that motion passes unanimously, that vote. So why don't we move on, Walter, and talk about the detailed design?
You got it. So that really brings us into the information that we had last time. That estimate of record, the estimate of record and the OPM check estimate within a 0.5% of each other and within 1% of the necessary construction cost estimate in order to meet the total project budget at the design development level. So in great shape on that. Again, this is a slide that we presented last time showing the breakdown of where the costs fit on the three different buildings. Really nothing out of the ordinary on anything like that. incorporates everything that's been discussed to date with all the focus groups and then with this committee as well.
Walter,
Yep.
I apologize, but
Yeah.
when there's an opportunity, can someone please let Lauren in? She's in the waiting room. Thanks.
Yep. No, not let me. I think I gotta pause the screen share, and I will do that right now. And I will let Kathy do that, and just when she gets in, I'll screen share again. Alrighty.
Thank you.
No problem. Thanks, Kathy. And all right, Greg, I'm gonna throw it to you for these design slides. Just let me know when you want me to move on.
Yeah, and I think Walter, you just touched on the last slide. As you can see, we're about 6 months out from, bidding documents. So the escalation is tracked at 2% for the 6 months. That's about 4% a year, where like a year and a half ago we were seeing, in the 8 to 9% range. So that's a good trend that hopefully stays true as we go through the bidding. So that's why you're seeing those differences. The next couple slides are just renderings everybody's seen before. I just want to remind people what is included in the document. So 524 Depot Street, public safety and public works building, including ancillary structures for the fuel island and the salt shed, as well as alternates for canopies in the DPW and at the police staff parking area. Jumping forward, Walter, a couple views from the street. Very simple exterior facade treatment, mainly masonry with a little bit of metal panel, and pretty efficient envelope to meet the new building and energy codes. And just jump forward, Walter. As we go down Depot Street from west to east, we'll just jump through them relatively quickly, Walter.
Yep.
And we'll jump back into DPW, right? So DPW slightly different, mainly a metal building with insulated metal panel, masonry base on that with entrance systems. Again, very efficient for the new energy code. The buildings are all on geothermal heat pump, so with a VRF system, so efficient energy usage for heating and cooling as well. We'll just jump forward to 321 Main Street. This is the corner of Stonehill's property for the fire substation. Again, mainly a masonry building with some, in this case, cementitious composite paneling on the side. Same energy standards here, and again, with the geothermal system. The total project budget does include the radio tower and infrastructure for that. That the small radio room will be housed inside of the mezzanine of the apparatus bay for the fire substation. We'll keep going. Just a reminder on the alternates and their value. So alternate number 1 was the canopy. This will be separated per the last meeting into 2 alternates. So kind of a 1A, 1B, though they'll be named 1 and 2, to divide this canopy in half so that we can separate that into a little bit finer detail. Should the value be there for half of it, we could do half and then add the other half as it comes along. Given the cost of the alternate, 1.1 million is a fair amount considering the size of the project. So making sure we have the ability to do that at a little finer detail is important. And then we'll jump to alternate number 2, which is the canopies at the police. A little bit more work is needed for this to really fine tune this, which we're working on as we go through the process. But generally, if we look at a standard canopy, we're somewhere in the $300,000 range here. So again, in that size where you would keep them likely all as one and not try to break them out into a smaller package, though. A PPA is certainly an option that has a kind of no upfront cost with some complications for coordination, but a good no cost option up front.
So with that, just kind of a quick update. Happy to take, I know Greg sent out a link to the design development, detailed design package. I think it is quite a large file, so I know some people probably dug through quite a bit of it. But happy to answer any questions or concerns. But with that, Andy, we're happy to turn it back over to you for a vote of the MBC to approve the project scope and budget for detailed design and to move the package forward into CDs. Project forward, sorry.
All right, and why don't we do the same thing? Why don't we just go around through the committee and get comments or questions from anyone? I guess I'll start out. In general, Greg, it looks to me like, just looking through those, I think there's like 700 pages there for a good amount. I mean, the big thing I saw was that it looks like there's a lot of site work at Depot Street compared to very little on Main Street. Does that sound right? Just looking at the plans.
Yeah, just basically, Andy, right? Depot Street is 5 times the size in area, so it's just generally going to be more, and it is a more complicated site. Under the building, the depth of removal of unsuitable soils is approximately the same. Depending on where you are on the site on Depot Street, you're in the 5-foot range for removal of soils underneath the building. And on Main Street, you're 4, 4.5, something like that. So the depth is relatively consistent, but the area naturally at Depot Street, given the size of the buildings, is just much, much more. Additionally, right, Depot Street has a little bit more slope to it, and the buildings are much larger. So even though the slope is relatively gradual on the site, the buildings are very long, and so that triggers some site work to make up that. So we are able to reuse some of that soil on site to make up that regrading, and in the cut areas we can take over and put them in the fill areas and the big excavation underneath the buildings. As long as we amend that soil, we can use some of it to do the fills on site. So we've tried to balance the soils within the site so that we're not exporting a lot of soils out, though we'll have to bring in some soils to amend and make up under the building. There is a significant amount of site work, and I think you see that reflected in the estimate numbers for the budget. These are consistent with the schematic design level documents that we provided. There is a little bit more retaining wall at Depot Street than we expected, just based on staying out of some wetlands and things like that. But that makes a little bit less grading and rework on the back end. So there's some some trade-off there. Again, all included within the estimate.
Yeah, and we're fortunate to have a site of that size to accommodate it. So we'll work around that. The only other question I had, and then I'll hit down the rest of the group, just generally on HVAC. So I saw in the drawings the mechanical rooms, heat pumps, and you got the VRF. The other spaces, what is so the bays are doing just radiant?
Yeah, so right now the bays are just heated with radiant and some supplemental, I think they're like modine units, so water
Hydronic
heated hydronic water units to basically make up when the overhead doors open in the winter. There's a big gush of cold air. Those modine units are there really kind of temper the space and to do freeze prevention for the fire protection system.
So that's just strictly heating in the bays.
Yeah, it's heating in the bays. And in the public safety building, the loads are fairly balanced because you have a fair amount of cooling in the summer. So they offset the loads. In public works, we're still exploring and we'll continue to explore opportunities to balance those loads a little bit more. So as we, balance those loads, one opportunity would be to slightly temper the air in some of the bays. So I wouldn't call it cooling necessarily, but to run a cold water loop into the units to rebalance that or to better balance that load for the geothermal portion of the site. That adds a little bit of money in coils for the unit, but it would hopefully take away some money for wells. So it's really an offsetting cost that shouldn't really impact the project. It's just making sure we can do that in a long-lasting solution for the project.
I didn't get to dive deeply into them, to be honest with you, but there are rooftop units. Are these just servicing particular areas? Was that just like the
So
bunker air rooms, like the
So
negative?
they bring in all the fresh air for the building.
Okay, they just make
yeah.
it
So
bigger.
that brings in fresh air, tempers that air, and brings that fresh air into the building and exhausts what needs to be exhausted.
Okay, all right. All right, Ken, did you just want to chime in? I'll go down the list.
No, I think my only concern, and maybe to be a little bit lessened going forward, was with my own experience, and I just was at a conference and heard some other construction stories where the lead times on generators and some electrical equipment was substantial, between a year and 2 years actually on some of it. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, guys. Is there any special consideration to that, or I'm just interested in your thoughts.
Go ahead.
Nope, go. So early and often is the biggest thing. As soon as we get that contract awarded, we're gonna push them for those submittals. We did actually earlier today got some great news on the electrical side of things. So we were hearing 70+ weeks as recent as a couple weeks ago, and just placed a monster order. We're told that it's coming in 36 to 50 weeks. So definitely improved. Generators, we're still hearing 70 weeks. Luckily, that's one of the last things that you need in the building. Some of the RTUs are drastically improved. Roofing was hit really bad during COVID, or specifically like tapered insulation. That's gotten much, much better. So they're improving. I think the one that we're still struggling with is generators, and hopefully those get better real soon. Greg, seeing anything different on your end?
Yeah, so we've seen generators improve, certainly. These have some large generators, and one benefit to buying 3 large generators at a time is you have a little bit of leeway with the sales rep, and you can put a little pressure on them to make sure that those generators are there when you need them. They are unfortunately one of the commodities that got hit relatively hard, but a year ago they were 80 something weeks, Chad, in some cases, and they're down to somewhere in the 50 to 60 week range in most cases, with a couple exceptions to that. Gear is still a little bit of an issue, though we're seeing most gear come in between 40 and 50 weeks now, which is well in line with the time frame for these projects. I think when we planned these schedules out originally, we allotted for a little bit more time than we would have, 5 years ago, given the supply demand issues that we've been seeing, and making sure we're setting expectations correctly and setting the schedule correctly so that we're not being overly aggressive with the schedule. And PMA has done a good job spelling that out, and I would expect no less as we go into a single project delivery where the contractor has realistic expectations set on them in the contract so that they can both bid aggressively but deliver responsibly within budget and time frame.
All right,
Is there
great.
any requirement for getting those shop drawings in sooner than later? I mean, sometimes they don't put them in on time. They don't submit them on time, and it takes forever to get them approved and then finally get the order in. So I don't know if you've included any time frame requirements in there for getting the shops in or for that stuff.
So Ken, in the front end, there's a requirement for not only a project schedule, but also a submittal schedule that incorporates lead times for the equipment that's needed. as you know, including these things in the specification is a great thing. You know, it's like an airbag in a car. It just stops you from dying when you crash. The team staying on top of the contractor to make sure they're submitted is really what gets the project done correctly. I think we're all committed to doing that. And you know, hopefully we'll have a successful bid and successful contractor that can fulfill these requirements.
We've tightened up our supplementary general conditions since COVID too. A lot of the projects were tied up with that. So we do have specific requirements. I think it's for long lead items within 30 days of contract award, they're required to get that submitted into us.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also think it's it's one of the benefits to having a single general and a single set of file submitters on the project. Much more easy to manage, and I think that's, even given the price benefit, I think that's even more important. But thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Jamie, you want to chime
Just-
in?
My only thing was, are any surprises anticipated with utilities? And I know everything is going underground for the most part, except for, we talked about the bridge on the 524 Depot Street, and that being traced, I think, and that'll be above ground, kind of traced along the base of the bridge. And that was the only thing that on its surface concerned me a little bit. Can you guys ease my concerns?
Yeah, Jamie. So I did consult back with the civil engineer, and it actually doesn't need to be heat traced given the size of the line and that it's a force main. So the water is looped, so the domestic water, you know, the water will kind of continuously flow through there, so it's not going to sit there. It's a relatively large pipe size, so we don't really have concerns with freezing there. Similarly with the sewer's pumped, so it's a force main, so that's a pump system that kind of pushes through under pressure, and it's hung under the bridge and insulated, so it won't really need to be like heat traced or anything like that, given the capacity and the time frames of the TPWs using it. Relatively simple systems, basically a pump and a pipe that get hung there. That goes down to a manhole that is just beyond Whistle Stop Plaza that connects back to the Mansfield area. So there's about 1,000 feet of force main after you leave the public safety building to get down to that manhole and go into there. At that point, it becomes a gravity system along to the new pump station. I believe that Sawmill. Dave, correct me if I'm a little bit wrong on where the pump station is.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Thank you, Greg.
All right, and Lauren, you just want to chime in with any comments or questions?
I have no comment. Thank you.
All righty. And Dave?
I'm good, thank you.
All right. Nancy?
I did not read the 700 pages. I did look at a couple of them, but this is way over my expertise. So I trust all of you that know what you're doing.
Jason?
I had a quick question about the separate items for bids for some of the canopies. And I was wondering, are there any advantages or disadvantages to doing that either with the project or further on down the line? You know, if it was something that was done further on, would that be more expensive, irregardless of inflation, just because other alterations would have to be made to the existing buildings to put those canopies on? You know, could it cause any additional damage to any of the site work that's going to be done as part of the building? I was just curious what your thoughts were, whether, you know, if there's a significant difference of including that with the main project, or if it was something that needed to be done in the future, what everybody had to say in terms of how that may play out.
Yeah, you're absolutely, that's a great question. I think PMA and KBA would very likely agree that the most competitive way to bid that would be to bid it as an ad alternate potentially a deduct alternate based on how we see the estimates come in at the 80% CD time. But if we were to include it in the project at a later time, you're going to get pricing as change order pricing, and it's going to be inflated compared to your ad alternate pricing. Greg or Chad, feel free to chime in. I don't think we're going to have any issues on the DPW end with site work as it's attached to the building, and Greg's and Brian's team have been able to design that. On the police canopy end, if it's powered, you know, we may run the future conduit out there or the amenities out to it, but there could certainly be with the canopies some site work that would get disrupted, but very likely would cost more to do at a later time rather than coordinated in as an ad alternate.
Yeah, I would agree, Walter. And certainly if you know, let's take them separately, the DPW, if you finish the DPW without the canopy and then go back to add it, say 5 years down the line, there is certainly some modifications that you have to do to the building to be able to install that canopy then. You're also at a somewhat of a disadvantage, you know, a couple of years later, because it is a much smaller scope. So you lose a little bit of the economy of scale. When you go to do that, you have to add on systems for that canopy. It does have sprinkler and other things that are sized inside the building to accommodate that, but you do have to go in. It's not like just framing a wood canopy with a carpenter, right? It's a much more complicated endeavor to install that later. It's just a little bit simpler if you can do it with the building. That said, right, the project budget is fixed, so we have to have a way to be able to negotiate the project budget in, you know, in respect to that, and be able to do that later in the future. So either option is there. It's always a little bit more cost effective to do it as a larger project, as you've seen with, you know, combining 3 buildings. On the police canopy, it's a little bit of a different equation because there are kind of 3 different options. If we're doing just fixed canopies, it's always cheaper to, like Walter said, bid that with the project and be straightforward. If you are, however, maybe not able to go through an alternate like that or accommodate with that with the budget, there is that option to go with a PPA. It is a lot more coordination up front to try to bake in the infrastructure for something that you haven't bought yet. But it's doable with a lot of coordination and some minor headaches to do that, and is a potential relatively cost neutral option for the town to be able to do it. And if you were to buy the solar, it would be the same thing, just you're also adding the cost of the canopies and the solar to the you know, future project. So hopefully that helps clarify a little bit, Jason. But you know, they're all kind of options, unfortunately, just given the project budget. You kind of have to have all of them on the table. There's a preferred, and then there's a, you know, kind of secondary path to get there.
Okay, thanks, gentlemen. That's kind of what I thought. And I just have one follow-up question on the solar. If the canopies put in were decided to be solar canopies, what's the advantage of making those canopies solar versus potentially putting solar on the roof space, given the amount of square footage that's up on the roof? Why would we choose one or the other? Or is just being able to do the canopy something where we would just have that additional square footage on top of what's potentially on the roofs of the proposed buildings?
I think it's really just you have the option to do the PPA where some of the cost is shared or deferred to the vendor. Greg, feel free to jump in on that. It really doesn't associate to the building.
Yeah, Jason, with the calculation on the solar for the canopies for the carports is a little bit different, because you're not just looking at, you know, what's the most competitive, either PPA or solar, right? You're offsetting other costs for something you want, which is what the department actually wants is the cars undercover, right? They don't necessarily care that it's PV or not. The way that you can get there in a cost neutral way, or relatively cost neutral way, is a purchase power agreement. As you point out, right, that gives up, if you purchase power agreement without the roof, that gives up that future roof square footage with the the canopy square footage because you can't sign two separate purchase power agreements feeding back into the same building. You could do an overall PPA for both, right, where it's roof and canopy, depending on how the PPA market is and the interconnect market is at the time where we get there. Right now, it's just not a great time for that. They're requiring batteries and a lot of other things that are kind of cost prohibitive, at least at this juncture. And so you're ending up with a much higher PPA rate, and there's not a ton of savings. So there's a little bit of hurry up and wait here where we have to be kind of a little bit flexible with how we approach that because the market conditions are changing. I'm sorry if that wasn't a very clear answer. Unfortunately, there is not a super clear answer.
No, it's always hard when the pieces and the targets are continually moving, which certainly seems to be the case in this instance.
And so just you could purchase, right, the either the non-PPA, the non-solar carport or the solar carport and have it stand alone. And you could always do that with purchase solar up on the roof. It's just right now the project budget doesn't have that capacity to add that scope.
And if I'm not mistaken, we have to make those decisions as to the final option. Was that 80% CDs? Is that what you said, Walter, when we get to that point?
I think we're gonna make that. We're likely gonna have that discussion starting July and hopefully finishing in August. So probably at the time that this same vote is occurring at that 80% CD level, we'll be looking to lock in what the plan is moving forward. Greg, feel free to. I think that's what we discussed at the last couple meetings.
Yeah, and there's work going on behind kind of on our level to make sure that we're presenting the best options based on the best and most current data back from kind of what's going on out in the PPA market and what's happening with the utility. The utility is now engaged through their program with Mass Save. So we've done a kickoff meeting with them to start the process for Mass Save. So they care a lot about the efficiency of these buildings. There's some fairly hefty rebates and incentives built into the project. That's a good avenue to start pushing these issues from the project team level to back to the utility, because ultimately it's the interconnect of the PPA or any solar back to the grid that is at issue currently. So those things will be brought up in those energy efficiency meetings, as well as at a higher level if need be by the project team and the utility.
Ready? And Lisa, did you want to chime in? I think you.
No, I completely support the comments.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. So I think that was everyone. So, and Walter, I just want to make sure the line item is correct on the, because as far as what we're saying is detailed design development, the scope and budget too.
It's really just approval of the package. It includes the project scope and budget.
Okay. I know. That's just wanted to make sure the wording was right.
Yep.
Right. So do I have a motion to approve the detailed design and design development package? Do I have a motion for that?
Evans.
Jamie? Do I have a second?
Second, Loomis.
All right. All right. A roll call vote. I am a yes. Ken?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
All right. Nancy?
Yes.
And Jason?
Yes.
All right. So that is unanimous. That vote is approved. So why don't we move on to that next topic, which I think you're putting up there, Walter.
You got it. Yep. So commissioning agent services. So for anyone that was involved in the Blanche Ames School, you may remember that on MSBA projects, the MSBA assigns and also covers the cost of commissioning agent services on a project for the MSBA. PMA, the owner's project manager, manages them through that process, working with the designer, working with the contractor and the owner. And it's really a detailed review, drawing review, to ensure that the owner's needs are being met on the design end. But really more importantly is at the construction end is a full comprehensive review of the building envelope and a full comprehensive review of the building mechanical systems. It's been PMA's and I believe KBA's experience that they are extremely beneficial to the project, specifically on MSBA projects. The one difference on this is that the cost would be borne by the town because there is no MSBA money funding this. With that being said, the soft cost bucket of money that is carried in the budget is exactly what these items, an item like this would be planned for. That bucket has not been tapped into at all. So PMA reached out to David and Connor and Andy and spoke with them about bringing this to this group, and all three of them really recommended that and thought it would be a good idea with the complexity of these mechanical systems and the new energy code and really the new building code and everything like that. Just making sure that that this would be a good idea for the project. It would be all three buildings. So what you see on your screen in front of you is a kind of a timeline of how PMA would look to procure the services of a commissioning agent. We've worked with multiple. We'd likely reach out to 3 or 4. If anyone has any recommendations, we're happy to, or also a no-go list, we're happy to speak about that as well. But we'd be developing that RFS, drafting that RFS, putting it out on the street sometime in June, and looking to bring back to this committee the information from the proposed vendors, and then in August getting them going on the CD level of the drawings for a drawing review, though it'll be incorporated into the 100% package, and then also getting them ready and up to speed on the project for the commissioning agent services through construction. So Chad or Greg, anything else to add on commissioning agent services, the proposed plan, and or anything else that they provide?
No, I think it's a beneficial service to engage in, particularly with a number of buildings over a number of sites. So probably helpful.
So it's really the standard, the norm in any major major project at this point in time, public or private.
With that, Andy, so obviously this is really just it doesn't need to be a vote. It's just a consensus. It can be just consensus approval from the committee for PMA to move forward with the procurement effort. We'd obviously be coming back to the committee for a formal vote to approve bringing that company on board.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I would tell you it's money well spent. This was a big project. It is a complex project. It only makes sense. I was just going to ask, I didn't know who was the commissioning agent for the Blanche James. I know it was through the MBS, but I didn't know who it was or how that worked out on that project.
That was SMMA.
It was SMMA for Blanche James. That's correct. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, worked out well. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, where are they out of? Where's CX out of?
For Blanche James, they're out of Cambridge. SMMA is out of Cambridge, but we work with many firms. We try to keep to the local firms, or at least firms that have local staff. I mean, we've worked with firms in Pennsylvania, New York State, really all over the Northeast. But our preference is obviously for firm that has a local team. So the ones that are out of state and don't show up as frequently tend to drop to the bottom of the list. We need to take a look at the Chapter 7 procurement of PMA and see if this was contemplated in that, and that'll determine whether they would be a sub to PMA or have to go out on the open market. So we need to do a little digging on procurement laws just to make sure we're all above board on that. But we'll do that as part of that RFS development.
Thanks, Chad.
Yeah, why don't we just do a vote just to cross our T's and dot our I's, Walter, to, to approve the, the request for services, and like you said, and then obviously down the road for the actual vendor. Anyone else have any questions, comments, concerns before we vote on that? About the commissioning agent?
I think a project of this size and complexity, it's definitely required. I definitely say yes.
All right, with that, why don't we just, like I said, make sure we're crossing our T's and dot our I's. Why don't I'll take a motion to vote to approve commissioning agent services procurement. Do I have a motion for
So
that?
moved. Seven.
Stebbins. Do I have a second?
DeLuca, second.
Nancy? All right, we'll just do a roll call vote. I am a yes. Ken?
Yes.
Jamie?
Yes.
Lauren?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
And Jason?
Yes.
All right, so that passes unanimously. So at least, in that way, I think, and then we'll, and so basically, Walter, we will also, once you get those vendors, we will vote to approve one specific one. Is that the plan?
Yep, we'll like Chad said, we'll confirm that we are following procurement laws before going out. We'll send out a draft copy of the RFS for everyone to put eyes on. We'll get it live as soon as we can, and we'll get those quotes back from the qualified vendors and bring them to the to the MBC for final approval, so that we can get them going for CDs. So I think we have a solid plan for the summer for commissioning agent services.
Great.
With that being said, we'll jump to project schedule update. I'm gonna kind of jump through here because PMA will be combining these two into one combined project, the 524 Depot Street, the 321 Main Street. They're gonna follow along the 524 Depot Street project schedule. So we'll kind of go over some of the big key dates coming up and NBC timeline moving forward. But we'll update that for the next building committee meeting, municipal building committee meeting. Designer work plan. So KBA's already put together their designer work plan. Really going to be the same process that Greg and his team and the Weston Sampson team have been going to review, confirm, and develop those site plan, the plans in general, plans and specs. Greg, anything to add on KBA work plan?
Just only if you thought 700 pages was long, wait for the next round. It gets a little bit longer. It is a pretty significant amount of documentation that goes into these. And for those of you who went through the set, there's a lot of unfinished things in there right now. This next step is really to finish out those things that are unfinished, to add in a lot of detail and specificity to items that aren't currently there, so that we get a really complete bid set to send out to the contractors for bidding and ultimately construction. This includes a number of narratives and some other things that you see here. This is kind of the presentation version of a work plan. There's about 7,000 items on a list behind the scenes that end up happening to check off the list to make sure we've gotten everything as complete as possible. We've checked off a couple of these things already. We've reviewed almost all of them already with you in some form or the other. But really, this is bringing it to a formal completion with a check along the way at 80% construction documents, so that if there are changes in the market, changes in the economy, adjustments that need to be made, we can make those just before we go out onto the open market for bid, so that we have the highest chance of coming in within budget, potentially able to get those alternates pulled into the project that we have. it's a really good project, so I expect there'll be a lot of interest. PMA has already started the outreach on that, so that's great because people know about it. People start calling and asking and putting it in their bid schedules. So that's what we're driving for, and that's what this kind of next step is for. We're not done, clearly, right? We have a lot to go. And so there will be adjustments and corrections and kind of evolution along the way. But what you see in the DD represents the kind of overall scope of the project. And what you see here listed on the work plan is the next, kind of the path to get us to the next milestone.
Right. So next steps will be finalizing and preparing that permitting. You see that highlighted right here, and then moving into the CD phase. Bidding in December and January. Pre-qual is going to start a little bit earlier than January, just a little bit earlier than December, but really the bidding process will be starting in December, and then CA early in 25. Permitting, we'll combine we'll keep these separate, but they're going to run concurrently. The plan is to submit to Conscom for 6/3, so that's Monday, in order to meet their public hearing dates and their meeting schedule. We have the initial hearing, the second hearing, and then the third if required. So the KBA and Weston Sampson team are all over these, making sure that they have their information ready for those submissions. Any changes or adjustments to the schedule, we'll be sure to make sure that they align with the project schedule, but not anticipating anything right now. And the permitting for 321 Main, really following the same path. Greg, anything to add on permitting?
Just sorry, this is planning and zoning board. I think the 6/3 permitting date is slightly off on the planning and zoning. They align with the conservation. I think it's like a week later or something like that.
Okay.
So we have it in the back end. I think I just screwed up the presentation.
Oh, right here, these ones. Okay. Yep. So either way, these are both of these permitting items are carried within the project schedule, and we are on track with the project schedule as well. So key dates, 8/28 will be the 80% CD drawings to the estimators. September 24th will be that first MBC meeting once we have our initial reconciled estimates. October 8th will be this kind of similar meeting, approval of the 80% CDs. October of 24 will be trade contractor and general contractor pre-quals. November 12th would be an MBC meeting for 100% design update following that. And then December 2024, general and trade contractor bidding. Oops. All right, my computer's skipping a little bit. 1 sec. So really that wraps up our design development MBC meeting key dates. I believe you all should have had calendar invites from the PMA team for the meetings that you see highlighted on here. And really this takes us through to the potential beginning of construction, at least through the bidding process. Obviously we'll update it as necessary. But just wanted to make sure everyone had those in the calendar. As the meetings get closer, we'll update them with the Zoom information as we've been doing. And that's everything the PMA team had. I believe it's everything the KBA and Weston Sampson team had, and I'll turn it back over to Andy.
Yeah, great presentation. It's so easy when you put everything like this. It's really helpful. I think maybe I'll shoot an email out to the folks. So the 6/24 is the date for the Concom, and 7/15 will be the first meeting with zoning and planning. Those are the dates, correct? Yeah. So I'll shoot out an email. I might try to make one of them. I'll let everyone know if someone wants to attend. I'll try to attend both. It's just schedule, as I'm not sure. Just good to have some ears on those. All right. Any other new business? We covered a lot today. I didn't know if anyone has any other new business. All right. Seeing none, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Stebbins.
Amy, and do I have a second?
Second, Carlton.
All right, Ken. All right. I am a yes. Ken,
Yes.
Jamie,
Yes.
Lauren,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
and Jason.
Yes.
All right. All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming out. Good turnout again. And thank you for your time, and have a good start of the summer if I don't talk to you sooner.
Yeah. Thanks, Danny.
Thanks,
and
everyone.
Thanks, KBA
Thank
teams.
you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right.
Have a good night, everybody.
Easy.
Thanks, everybody. Have a
Bye.
good night.